Well, Madam Secretary, thank you, General. Good to see you guys again. I'd like to get an update on the Army's formalizing the 11th Airborne MTO. I know that you have been both really big supporters. I think it's great. We got another airborne division, right? Probably the best in the Army right now. No offense to the 82nd Airborne Division, Mr. Chairman, but the 11th Airborne Division in Alaska is gaining quickly on the 82nd. It's always good to have inter-service or inter-Army competition. But I'm hoping that the MTO will alleviates the self-funding burden that the division has shouldered since it stood up a few years ago. As you know, some of the ops, some of the training, some of the elements of operating in the cold weather in Alaska cost more. And I think we want to make sure that that unit is getting resourced in a very realistic way so they're not having to kind of undertake this self-funding burden on them. So can you give me, either of you, an update on that?
Sure, why don't I start and then turn it over to the chief, who I know is very focused on this. One thing we're doing, first of all, I would note to your comments about the airborne, as you probably know, elements of the 11th Airborne did an airborne drop over Norway, I think just in February or March. That was
great.
very successful.
And there was some very serious cold weather training. It was done all winter.
Yeah, in February, exactly.
Yeah, 40 below. I mean, people were getting on it. It's not easy to operate in 40 below zero.
Yeah, I can only imagine, literally, as someone who grew up in Texas. But we are doing 2 war games this year, specifically to help us better understand kind of what are the needs of the soldiers in terms of their cold weather gear, cold weather equipment. So that's one initiative we have underway to help us look at the MTO, but let me let the chief build on that.
So having been up in Alaska in February, March, I mean, surviving is tough. And so we're really proud of the 11th Airborne, the big exercise that the Secretary was talking about. I mean, not only surviving, but thriving. Yeah. And so we've increased our training. You know, we have the joint multi-purpose training up there that you can do almost anything in Alaska, and that's a real advantage to us. And so India, for example, was also out as our partners and trained up in Alaska. We're doing an MTO review right now. As you know, Senator, what works in Texas for systems doesn't necessarily work or won't work when it's 40 or 50 below up in Alaska. So, and the vice is going to and I think you've met with him recently, is going to go through exactly what we want to do is make sure that they have the right equipment for operating in the Arctic.
Yeah.
And then how do we kind of set some aside, because the other great thing about that unit, they're very physically hard. They can operate anywhere in the world. And we have that capability to do that.
Well, General, I appreciate you directly addressing this because, as you know, when you're looking at the difference in operational capability, no matter what it is, it's harder and more expensive to operate in that kind of environment. And sometimes in the past, I was worried that was just got fairy dusted. Well, you're going to get the same amount of money as the units down in the lower 48. Don't worry about it being tougher in the Arctic, but it is tougher. You guys are seeing it, so I think they need to be resourced in that way that addresses that. Would you agree?
I would agree, and what we're trying to do as well, like for resourcing, make sure that they're also not taking care of equipment that doesn't going to work.
Yeah.
So we're going to pull some of that out. So I think it's a combination of things to make sure we've given them the cold weather equipment. I think what we got to do now is make sure we have it's sustainable, that we can give it to them. We're buying additional Cat Vs. As you know, that's what you need to be operational. That's up there. We're reviewing all of that.
Great.
Senator.
Let me turn to the topic the 3 of us discussed in my office a couple months ago on the Army force structure changes. Some big articles in Alaska. Some people actually had some concerns about kind of the overall kind of top line numbers. You know, we went through that whole 425 issue where the Obama administration was going to get rid of the 425, and that was actually us here in the Congress who stopped that. But in our meeting, you two both mentioned to me that the force structure changes that the Army's doing overall are going to mean a increase of 1,469 more soldiers in Alaska by 2030. Can I just, in this committee, kind of in the hearing room, can I just get your recommitment to that number?
Senator, I will say, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we do have those numbers, and I'm certainly willing to, I am confident that what we explained to you before was accurate, so we commit to that.
Okay.
And I just was going to add, Senator, I think part of it was we have the force structure up in Alaska. We need to recruit now, which we're doing better.
Yeah.
To fill out those formations, which is what we really are trying to get after immediately.
Great. I had several more questions, but being true to my word to the chairman, I'm going to yield my time back.
Senator, we welcome you to join us in a closed session.
Oh, good.
And you
Okay.
may ask
Thank you,
those
Mr.
questions
Chair.
there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan.